Midnight, September 13th. The Polish countryside is still. The air over Greater Poland is calm, almost unnaturally calm. Farmers in the nearby village of Powidz glance upward at the night sky, expecting nothing but stars. Then it happens. A low rumble at first, so faint it could be mistaken for a storm. But the sound builds. It swells until windows begin to tremble. Children wake up in confusion. Dogs bark wildly. And then the roar of jet engines. One after another, shadows streak across the moonlit sky. Twin tails, wide wings, blazing afterburners cutting through the darkness. They come in formation, dozens of them, thunder rolling in their wake. It's not an air show, it's not a drill. This is the arrival of America's Eagles. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll unpack what this deployment entails, how it's being executed, and why it sends shockwaves from Warsaw to Moscow. Stay tuned. The calculus of air power in Poland just changed overnight. Europe's power balance tips. By the time the sun rises, Powidz Air Base is unrecognizable. Where yesterday there were empty aprons and quiet runways, today the tarmac is crowded with US Air Force F-15s, their canopies glinting in the dawn light. Some still carry the dust of transatlantic flight. Their missile rails are loaded, their bellies heavy with fuel. Polish onlookers can only stare. In one night, the United States has transformed a sleepy transport base into a fortress of air power. And the timing couldn't be more dramatic. Just days earlier, 19 Russian drones penetrated Polish airspace, forcing Warsaw to invoke NATO's Article 4. It was a moment of vulnerability, a reminder that in this new era, threats don't come with warning labels. They appear suddenly in the dark, probing defenses, daring NATO to act. Poland asked for help. This is the answer. Not cautious diplomacy, not token reinforcements, but an unmistakable message to Moscow. Don't even think about it. Ever since the arrival of the F-15s, Poland has been in shock. This is the largest surge of US fighters onto its soil since the Cold War. But make no mistake, this isn't some symbolic deployment. It isn't about appearances. This is the United States executing a bold proof of concept that it can forward deploy a fully combat-ready fighter wing across an ocean overnight. It's about speed, it's about mass, and most of all, it's about deterrence. Because the F-15s that just landed aren't museum pieces. They're not here to sit quietly on a ramp. These are war-ready strike eagles, the very jets that carried the fight across the Middle East for decades. They've flown into contested skies before, and now they're here, armed, fueled, and positioned right on NATO's front line. For Warsaw, this surge is reassurance in steel and afterburners. It means that after years of preparing bases like Powidz for this very moment, the alliance can actually deliver. For NATO, it's a precedent. Until now, talk of agile combat employment was theory, a buzzword in strategy papers. But this is ACE in action. A full fighter package, refueled mid-air, dropped directly into an upgraded Polish airbase and made combat capable within hours. And for Moscow, it's a nightmare. Just as Russia and Belarus kicked off their Zapad 2025 war games, hoping to flex muscle along NATO's border, the United States responded with something more tangible, a wall of eagles. The implications are enormous. The calculus of air power in Europe has changed, not in months or years, but in a single night. Dozens of American fighters now sit within striking distance of Kaliningrad, Belarus, and even Western Russia. They can launch at a moment's notice. They can patrol Poland's skies around the clock, and they can strike targets deep behind enemy lines if the order ever comes. For Poland, this isn't just reassurance, it's transformation. In the span of a week, the nation went from victim of a drone incursion to host of NATO's most formidable air power surge in decades. And for the world watching, one thing is clear: the Eagles have landed, and with them, a new era of NATO air power has begun. But what exactly touched down in Poland? Not a token squadron, not a handful of jets to reassure headlines. What landed at Powidz Air Base was a flood, nearly 24 F-15 Eagles, arriving in tight succession, engines screaming as they slammed down on Polish concrete. For context, Poland has hosted US fighters before, rotations of F-16s, F-35s, and even small detachments of F-15s, but never like this, never this many, this fast, and this heavily armed. When the first wave taxied in, observers noticed something unusual: live weapons hanging beneath the wings, not the inert training rounds often carried during exercises. These were live AIM 120 AMRAAMs, fully functional, radar-guided missiles designed to bring down enemy aircraft at beyond visual range. Alongside them, some jets carried sidewinders for close-in fights. These weren't jets arriving for practice, they were jets arriving for war. The sheer presence was overwhelming. 2 full squadrons worth of combat aircraft, jets that had been in Britain, perhaps even the United States, just a day before, now lined up in formation on Polish soil. Their tails stretched across the ramp, wingtip to wingtip, engines cooling, while ground crews immediately began swarming around them. In a single night, Powidz Air Base had gone from a quiet transport hub to the largest concentration of American fighters in Poland since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. To Polish civilians who saw the sky thunder with eagles, it was reassurance. To NATO allies across Eastern Europe, it was proof of solidarity. And to Russia, it was unmistakable deterrence, a reminder that NATO reinforcements aren't limited to paper exercises or hypothetical plans. They can arrive in overwhelming numbers without warning, and they can arrive armed. The Polish Ministry of Defense called it a shock. Analysts called it a game changer. And inside NATO headquarters, one phrase echoed, "This is what deterrence looks like." Part 2. But here's the real story, how those jets actually got there. Deploying nearly 24 fighters across the Atlantic isn't like booking a commercial flight. It's a ballet of timing, fuel, and logistics, every move choreographed down to the minute. The operation began days earlier at RAF Lakenheath in England, home of the 48th Fighter Wing, the Liberty Wing. Pilots were briefed, jets were armed, and crews loaded gear for an expeditionary deployment. Some Eagles may have even launched directly from the US East Coast, proving America's ability to push fighters across an ocean in a single bound. Once airborne, the ballet began. Tanker aircraft, KC-135s and KC-46, were already waiting over the North Atlantic. High above the ocean in the dead of night, boom operators leaned forward, guiding fuel into waiting Eagles. Each fighter took thousands of pounds of jet fuel mid-air, sometimes multiple times in a single crossing. It's called air-to-air refueling, a maneuver that looks routine but demands absolute precision. Imagine it, a fighter jet flying a few feet behind a tanker in turbulence at hundreds of miles an hour, connecting to a boom in the dark. Do that wrong, and the mission ends in disaster. Do it right, and you extend America's reach across oceans. By dawn, those same Eagles were racing toward Poland. Their destination wasn't random. Powidz Air Base had just completed a massive $200 million upgrade, funded by Poland and NATO. What was once a sleepy transport base for C-130s and C-17s is now a fortress. The runway was extended, aprons expanded, fuel tanks installed, and hardened ammo depots built into the ground. Every inch of Powidz was designed for moments like this, to receive a surge of fighters at a moment's notice and turn them combat ready in hours. When the Eagles touched down, everything clicked into place. Crews rolled out mobile hangars, Polish personnel directed jets into new parking slots, fuel trucks lined up like clockwork. Ammunition pallets were already waiting, stored just weeks earlier in anticipation of NATO's Eastern Sentry exercises. By the end of the day, Powidz wasn't a Polish base hosting American guests. It was an American forward fighter wing, operating as if it had been there all along. And that's the brilliance of the move. It wasn't just about jets landing, it was about proving that NATO's Eastern Front is no longer theoretical. Poland's investment in infrastructure, America's mastery of logistics, and NATO's commitment to readiness all converged in one place, in one night. Powidz is no longer a quiet name on a map. It's now a frontline fortress, and it just rewrote the playbook for how fast NATO can shift the balance of air power in Europe. Now, most people don't know this, but the F-15 Eagle has been called the most successful air superiority fighter in history. Since its introduction in the 1970s, it has racked up more than 100 aerial victories without suffering a single loss in air-to-air combat. But don't mistake heritage for obsolescence. The Eagles that landed in Poland aren't the same jets that flew in the skies over Vietnam or the Gulf War. Many of them are F-15E Strike Eagles, the heavy hitters of the US Air Force. These dual-role fighters were designed to fight in 2 domains at once: air dominance above, precision strikes below. 1 minute they're locking onto enemy fighters with beyond visual range missiles. Next, they're dropping 2,000-pound precision-guided bombs on command posts, missile batteries, or armored convoys. What makes the F-15E so deadly is its combination of power, sensors, and versatility. With conformal fuel tanks bolted to its fuselage, it carries more fuel than almost any other fighter in NATO. That gives it range, the ability to patrol Poland's skies for hours or strike targets deep into Belarus or Kaliningrad without relying on tankers. Then there's the radar. The newest F-15Es are equipped with the AN/APG-82 AESA radar, an active electronically scanned array that can sweep the sky like a searchlight, tracking dozens of targets at once. It's powerful enough to detect stealth aircraft, fast enough to switch modes in microseconds, and precise enough to guide missiles to targets beyond the horizon. Those missiles aren't dummies. Each Eagle carries AIM 120 AMRAAMs, radar-guided killers capable of striking enemies more than 100 miles away. On closer patrols, they load AIM 9X Sidewinders, missiles that can lock onto a target using a pilot's helmet visor, even if it's off to the side. And if the mission shifts from air defense to offense, the Strike Eagle can carry over 23,000 pounds of ordnance, JDOM smart bombs, laser-guided weapons, glide bombs designed to destroy hardened bunkers, and even anti-ship munitions for targets at sea. But perhaps the most important upgrade is invisible. It's called EPAWSS, the Eagle Passive Active Warning and Survivability System. Think of it as a digital cloak. EPAWSS detects incoming radar signals, identifies enemy threats, and instantly reacts, jamming, spoofing, and deceiving hostile systems. Against Russia's notorious S-400 surface-to-air missiles, this is the kind of edge that keeps pilots alive. At Powidz, these Eagles aren't just parking on the ramp, they're training for real missions. Imagine a combat air patrol, 2 F-15s circling high above Poland's eastern border, radars scanning out to Belarus. Another pair runs a low sweep, eyes on drones or cruise missiles that might try to sneak through. Overhead, NATO AWACS aircraft paint the full picture, feeding targets directly into the Eagle's cockpits. Below, Polish Patriot missile batteries watch the sky, forming a layered shield. Together, it's a seamless air defense web. And the tactics don't stop there. The Eagles are practicing integrated combat turns, a concept that looks like something out of a pit stop at Formula 1. A jet lands, taxiing into position. Its engines don't shut down. Crews swarm it. One team refuels, another reloads weapons, another checks systems, all at once, in minutes. The jet is back in the air before its engines even cool. The goal? To maintain constant coverage over Polish skies, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is NATO's shield in action. Not theory, not drills, but live jets, live missiles, and live crews, proving that if the order comes, the response will be immediate, overwhelming, and lethal. For Moscow, the sight of F-15Es at Powidz isn't just about the number of planes, it's about the capabilities those planes bring. Each one is a flying arsenal, a networked node, a sword, and a shield rolled into one. And the message is clear. Poland is no longer just defended. Poland is armed to strike back. Part 3. Here's where the story gets even more staggering. It's not just about the number of jets on the ground. It's about what they can do once they're there. And the math is shocking. At Powidz, nearly 24 Eagles are now parked wingtip to wingtip. Each one is capable of flying multiple missions per day. On paper, that means 2 sorties per jet. In practice, with rotation and aggressive scheduling, you're looking at 40 to 50 combat sorties launching from a single Polish base every single day. Stop and think about that. 50 times in 24 hours, an F-15 can take off loaded with live weapons, climb into the Polish sky, and set course toward the east. Some sorties will be high-altitude combat air patrols, maintaining a constant watch against intrusions from Belarus or Kaliningrad. Others will simulate strike missions, practicing the destruction of missile batteries, command posts, or supply convoys. Some will simply fly along the border, a show of presence, reminding anyone watching from across the line that NATO's air power is awake and alert. And what makes this possible isn't just the aircraft, it's the infrastructure on the ground. Powidz isn't improvising anymore, it was built for this. In May, construction crews finished installing enormous new bulk fuel tanks, capable of sustaining weeks of high-tempo operations. Hardened ammunition bunkers now sit carved into the earth, already filled with pallets of AIM 120 AMRAAMs, AIM 9X Sidewinders, and JDAM precision bombs. When the Eagles landed, they weren't arriving to empty racks. They were arriving to a base preloaded for war. The tempo doesn't stop at hardware. Crews work like a living machine. American maintainers, Polish support personnel, and NATO logistics specialists all moving in sync. Some live in temporary shelters or tents pitched on base grounds. They work 12-hour shifts, grab rations in between, and sleep in shifts. Their goal isn't comfort, it's combat readiness. And they're using one of the Air Force's most aggressive doctrines, agile combat employment. That means Eagles aren't just fueled and armed the traditional way. They're being turned around in hot swaps, with engines running, crews reloading weapons, and topping off tanks in minutes. The result? Jets can cycle back into the sky faster than ever, keeping Poland's airspace covered without gaps. If you want to imagine what this looks like, think of a Formula One pit crew, but with bombs, missiles, and jet fuel instead of tires. Every second saved means another fighter airborne, another patrol secured, another gap in the shield closed. The resilience is built in too. If one hangar is hit, the jets can be serviced on open ramps. If one fuel truck fails, another is already in line. If spare parts are short, crews cannibalize from grounded jets to keep the rest flying. It's messy, it's demanding, and it's brutally efficient. That's the hidden reality of this surge. It isn't just for show. It's about proving that the US can not only land fighters in Poland, but sustain them at a tempo that overwhelms any potential adversary. Imagine you're sitting in Moscow watching the numbers. 50 sorties a day. That's hundreds every week. Each sortie is a chance to intercept, to strike, or to remind Russia that any aggression in the air will be met by a storm of steel and fire. In a very real sense, Powidz is now more than just a base. It's a factory, producing combat power, one sortie at a time, with the kind of relentless rhythm that makes deterrence stick. And it's that tempo, that grind, that sheer volume of capability that sends the most powerful message of all. NATO isn't just present, NATO is ready. But this surge isn't just about jets on a runway. It's about shifting the balance of power in Europe. For the United States, it proves the doctrine of agile combat employment isn't theory anymore, it works. A fighter wing can be moved, armed, and made operational on NATO's front line in less than a day. For Poland, it's reassurance in its most tangible form. After years of investing in bases like Powidz, the payoff is here. US fighters, combat ready, on Polish soil. For NATO, it's precedent setting. The alliance can surge combat power eastward quickly and in force. That changes Moscow's calculus. Any move against NATO now carries the risk of immediate, overwhelming response. And for Russia, it's a warning. While they drill in Zapad, the United States just demonstrated that it can mass fighters right across the border. The message is simple. Intimidation won't go unanswered. In less than a week, Poland went from the shock of drone incursions to hosting the largest US fighter surge in decades. Dozens of Eagles now sit fueled, armed, and ready at Powidz Air Base. Each one is a flying promise that NATO skies are not to be tested. The calculus of European air power has shifted, not gradually, but overnight. The Eagles have landed, and with them comes a message written in steel and afterburner flame. NATO is awake, NATO is ready, and NATO will not be shaken. If this story gave you a new perspective on the front line of European security, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Because the future of air power is unfolding right now in the skies over Poland.